This is Nisha Katona, CEO of Mowgli Street Food, and you are listening to the Academy's Developing Practice podcast.
Hello, in this episode we met up with Nisha Katona, CEO of Mowgli Street Food restaurants and founder of the Mowgli Trust charity. We explore her experiences of setting up her restaurant chain, her leadership style and the motivation behind her actions. We hope you enjoy.
Nisha, we're really pleased to be speaking to you today. We're delighted to have the founder of Mowgli, one of my favourite restaurants in Liverpool, on the podcast to talk to us about your experiences. But before Mowgli, you were a child protection barrister. So we were just wondering if you could please tell us a little bit about your background and how you arrived at the creation of Mowgli.
That's about 50 years worth of information, I think. But I was born and raised in this country in a place called Skelmersdale, which is in the northwest of England, very working class town. My parents came over as doctors to Skem in about 1968. And so that's where I started my life. And very typically, I think, of Asian immigrants, we were raised to be either doctors or lawyers. And you certainly weren't raised to be in the kitchen. You weren't taught to cook or anything like that. But food was a very big part of your life. So I went through and I became a barrister. But all the while, it was really interesting. My earliest memories of being in Skem were bricks being thrown through our window. The racism was horrendous. We were the first Indians in the village, really. And we were spat at daily in the streets and stones thrown at us and fire bombs and things like that. And it's not trite to say that honestly for us, food became a real a vehicle for integration, because we would invite people back from school or from the neighborhood or from the street, and the teenagers would fill the house and then their parents would fill the house. And it was, as though I always say, as though Korma was this real sort of Kofi Annan force for integration for us. So food was a very big thing. And I think it is for many immigrants. These recipes, they will die out if we don't become trustees of them. And so even while I was a barrister, I was teaching Indian cooking. I was writing cookbooks. I got an agent for my sort of cookery media work while I was still a barrister. And then the sort of bug of entrepreneurship bit. And I started to think, look, if I'm addicted to this food, which in my view is not represented on the high streets, those curry houses are fantastic, but they are nothing like the way that we eat at home. Indians pretty much are, plant-based food that is cooked really fresh and simply. We don't have these heavy, thick sauces with lumps of meat on them. That's just not recognizable to most Indians. And I started to think, well, if I'm addicted to this food and have been for 50 years, maybe people in Liverpool might feel the same. And once the idea came to my head, it wouldn't let me sleep. And until I brought it to life, it was as though I would have lived a half life. It's that persuasive, the bite of the entrepreneur bug. And that's when I thought about starting Mowgli. So while I was a barrister, what I did is I thought, well, I'll research this. Let's see if people really would want this kind of food. So during the lunch breaks, I'd go and stand outside cafes and sandwich shops and see literally footfall count what people were ordering. Were they ordering things with spice in? What were the women ordering? What were the men ordering? Where did the high vis people go to have their lunch? What was the market? It was like doing a GCSE business exam. I would go after work and stand in the corner of commercial kitchens in my suit and just watch what it takes to run a commercial kitchen. Because for a woman like me, so I had 2 teenage daughters, I was approaching my 50s then, and you look at the way the media portray the hospitality industry, kitchens, chefs, and it is this aggression-filled, testosterone-fueled, brutal, hellish place. No place for someone like me. And so I really needed to understand, why is it inevitable that you turn into a beast if you're in a kitchen? And it's not inevitable at all. What's wonderful is that there was no playbook for me. I ripped it up and I started again and built Mowgli on this kind of maternal management model, this place that's filled with love and joy and kindness, with a zero tolerance policy on any aggression, on any brutality, with charitable giving as a sort of central pillar of what we do. And thank God, so far it's worked.
Wonderful. And what gave you that courage to step out and to give up what you trained for as a barrister? And in terms of what you're talking about with the kind of social dynamic of how kitchens were represented, what gave you that courage to be brave and to go for it?
Honestly, do you know, I really do think this, and the more I speak to entrepreneurs and business people, the more I realize that you are cut from two kinds of cloth. You're kind of content and normal, or you are an entrepreneur, and it isn't voluntary. Into Mowgli, and still it's the case. The roof over my head is dependent on Mowgli. I put all my savings into her. I really jeopardized everything to build this. And I'm a prudent person. It is beyond that. It is such a surging passion. I can't tell you, it's such an overwhelming, surging passion, because I could see there was a gap in the market. I knew that I had the skill to fill it in a unique way. What you don't know is whether people are going to come or not. But if two of the pieces are in place, then if you're an entrepreneur, it's not even a question. You have to try it. You have to try it. So it wasn't, honestly, it wasn't courage. And I'll tell you why it wasn't courage, because what it was hard work. It was total dedication. The reason it wasn't courage is because I carried on being a barrister. So I would work in court in the daytime. I would then go to the restaurant and put on high vis and a hard hat and physically build my first restaurant. I would then waitress in that restaurant. My children would see me by coming in and doing homework in the restaurant. It was absolutely a sacrifice of everything that I had for me and my family. That's not courage, that's graft, really. I think courage is a tricky one. I think you've got to be really clever about the way you approach this. It's not just about being gung-ho and thinking, I'm going to do it because I think I can do it. It really is that. You've got to, in a very mercenary and clinical way, thinking, is there a gap in the market? Can I uniquely fill it? Without crippling my responsibilities and my family, and in the process of doing that. And it's only when that second rope is firm enough for you to swing to, I would suggest you let go of your responsibilities. So I had a brilliant job with a great salary as a barrister, and I gave all of that up for Mowgli. Can you imagine? But it's only when I realized that, look, from Mowgli, I can do an Aldi shop and we'll be all right. It was only then that I swung across, and that's what I really advocate for anyone, is that don't just in that, if you build it, they will come way, think that they will, because that's nonsense. It's not the case that if you build it, they will come. It is not inevitable. You do your research, you look after your responsibilities, and then swing across. So it's not about courage, it's about being really clever and really responsible.
That's really interesting that you've obviously really nailed down on the hard work and the graft that you had to put in. And I've heard from various people who have been entrepreneurs or are doing that at the moment, and they say similar things about that their passion is the work, not what you get out of it, but it's the love of the process. Are you the same way?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's so interesting. I find entrepreneurs fascinating. It's a whole different psychology. And what's so interesting is you're absolutely right. What I realized about them is that the successful ones, you look at for all of his flaws, you look at the Steve Jobses and the Dysons and the Elon Musks, who's as mad as a box of frogs, or whatever, you look at them all. And the thing that they have in common, I was talking to my husband about this, is passion. It's not about they don't focus on the bottom line. You never go into entrepreneurism sacrificing everything, focusing on the bottom line, thinking, I will make this much money. Because that will give you fuel for a couple of months, maybe a couple of months. But what you need is to be evergreen. Your passion for your business, I always say in Mowgli, in head office, it always has to be springtime in Mowgli. Never even the summer, so I don't ever want to see the autumn leaves, of ideas sort of falling. It's always got to be springtime in terms of our ideas and our energy. And that comes from having a real passion for what you do, whatever it might be. You might be selling, shark's teeth or whatever, fossilized shark's teeth, whatever it is. If it comes from a passion that you can constantly sustain, that is new every morning, and you wake up and you've got, a new energy for it. I think that's what entrepreneurs the ones that are successful have in common. Business people, I think, that focus solely on the bottom line can make it, but I think they, not just personally, but I think the business and the energy in the business can become calcified very quickly. So you are very right. It's that passion. When you've got that passion, it's not, you don't work a day in your life. I don't think Mowgli's, I didn't as a barrister. I loved being a barrister. I feel in 50 years, I haven't worked a day in my life. And I could only wish that for my children. It's all you could wish for anyone, you know. And it's the same for you to look at us. This is work, and we're sitting here having a fantastic chat, you know. It's amazing. It's amazing, you know, and I appreciate that every single day. So that comes, I think, from the heart. You've got to love what you do.
Well, yeah, definitely. And the podcast for us is definitely a labor of love. We really enjoy this part of our roles without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. Your passion has obviously led to Mowgli being really successful and has gone from strength to strength with now 11 restaurants to date. Is that still up to date? Yeah, 11?
Yeah, we'll open our 12th in June, and then at the end of the year, we'll be getting 15 restaurants. I open about 4 restaurants a year. So far, we're on track to do Cheltenham, Cheshire Oaks, Bristol this year, and then into next year, we will do Glasgow, Edinburgh, Brighton. I'm looking at Newcastle. And Preston. So these are, for a year is what I will build while I can, if I can. Because for each Mowgli, we create 60 jobs and 40 grand a year for each house charity. So why would I not build? You know, it's that point again. Why am I building? Because the truth is, I would be better off personally if I just had one Mowgli and took all the money out of her. Do you know what I mean? That's a nice mama papa business. I don't do that. Sadly, you look at. I needed something bigger and better to get me out of bed every morning, and it's the creation of jobs, the charitable giving that we do in each thing. It's not a small thing. Honestly, you've got to have something worthy to work for, and that's why I build her.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to the charitable element of it a little bit later. I mean, some of the figures I've seen are amazing, really amazing. Together with that success as well. And by the way, just can I just throw in that, can Stoke be somewhere on that list? Because I need a Mowgli somewhere near me quite soon.
Yeah, you're going to move to Liverpool, for goodness sake.
Well, this is it. I can get to the one on Bold Street. So
at least
yeah, and Cheshire Oaks isn't too far
I'm
away
excited
either.
about Cheshire Oaks.
Yeah. I think it's great because it's got the parking and it's dog friendly. And for me, it's really, wheelchair friendliness is really important. You know, mobility scooter, because my mum's in one. So wherever I choose a new site, honestly, I go with my mum in a mobility scooter, take my dogs and my children. And that's how I go about choosing a new venue, is if it's no use to all of us, no use to anyone. And Cheshire Oaks is great in that way.
You've talked a lot about how Mowgli is there to enrich the lives in the cities that you go to, and that's a really nice vision to have. I was just wondering if you could explain to us a little bit about this kind of pillar that you have at the centre of your business for charitable giving. We chatted to the CEO of Clare House very recently on this podcast, and he was talking about the importance of kind of joining up business with the charities. Could you tell us about your motivation for doing that?
Yeah, it comes from this sort of maternal attitude towards the business. It's really interesting. So the reason I build Mowgli, or the reason we exist, is to enrich lives in the cities we go to. And that starts, it's not, the food comes later. It starts with enriching the lives of my staff, my team. So when I go to a city, want Mowgli to be somewhere you would want your children to go and work. That's the criteria for me, because to be in work in Mowgli is almost nicer than being at home. And so I want my people, and this is where it all comes from, to feel 3 things. I want them to feel purposeful, nourished, and fulfilled. Purposeful meals means I want them to know that there is a career tree, that you can go from being a KP, a kitchen porter in Mowgli, to head chef and earn more than a junior doctor in 2.5 years. That, I need you to know that, and we'll get you there. The nourished is, we put on a whole package of well-being programs. We send our chefs and our teams out to India to go and live in villages. We completely gird their life around with activities that enrich their lives. You know, it could be sushi making in the morning, or sourdough, or yoga, or cycling, or, you know, abseiling, whatever it is. We put things on for them. We have a Friday night dinner every Friday where the team stays behind and gets pizza, and we pay for all that. So that's the nourished. Now the fulfilled, I really do believe that as humans, for us to feel fulfilled, we've got to be outward facing. It's not about us, it's about actually seeing the needs of not just your direct community, but the people around you and globally. And that's charitable giving. So in the way that I would raise my children to be aware of life outside of their little cosseted middle class world, I want my teams to be living and breathing, the lives that our communities have and where their needs are, and that's charitable giving. So every Mowgli has a house charity. So when you are that way, and when you're looking at the needs of others, with that just comes a sense of your own fortuitousness and your fulfillment and all of that. So it's really important for your own emotional well-being in every way to have that outward perspective. That's where the charitable bit came from for me. When I set Mowgli up, I thought, how do I want my people to feel? To make them really feel as I would want my own children to feel, let's get a charity associated with each restaurant that I open. And so that's what I do. We have a house charity. We pay one of the members of staff to become the charity champion, and they constantly organize events, fundraising events for the charity. For every full-time member of staff we take on, we sponsor a child in need, and we don't just sponsor them, our people write to them, interact with them. It is a part of your day-to-day life in Mowgli to be thinking about your house charity and what we can do. And I think from that, there is it really sort of feeds you as a person. So that's where the charitable thinker, it sounds a bit, do you remember Smashy and Nicey, those DJs? Charity. And I hate even talking about it, you sound like such a prat, but actually I don't care. I'm going to say the word and I'm going to talk about charitable giving, because I believe that every single one of my children that work for me in my restaurants could go on to be an entrepreneur, and I too would want them to have charitable giving as a central limb of whatever business they go on to build. So shamelessly, I will talk about it, because I just think we all need to be cognizant of that sort of duty to our community and to our global community when we're lucky enough to be able to make money out of the business, really.
I think you're right. I think it makes a real impact on your local community, doesn't it? But it also makes an impact on yourself as well. As a family, we've sponsored a child in need. When my eldest was born, we decided to sponsor a child, just like you do for every employee that you take on. And the impact that's had on us as individuals, as well as obviously on the child that we've sponsored, is massive. It's really enhanced our experience as a family. So I guess there's that kind of two-way thing, isn't there, between the charity, what you give to the charity, but also what the charity gives back to your employees as well.
Really, you are absolutely right. And that's why I'm really particular about the charities that we support, because, what's great to talk about Liverpool charity, we've got Clatterbridge, we've got Clare House. I call it co-parenting. So when I meet the founders and CEOs of these charities, I talk about co-parenting, and we will stay with that charity as long as they look after my people, as long as and this is what's so important with Clare House and Clatterbridge, they take our teams around the hospital. So our teams understand that, look, if we raise this much money, we get to get this kind of a machine, or we can have, £40 to make a wig, for someone that's having chemotherapy. Those tangible indicators of where the money's going are so important. So I only work with charities that actually day to day are helping co-parent my Mowgli teams. But like you say, Alex, you've raised a child now with this kind of sibling, a charitable sibling, and this is exactly what I want to do with my Mowgli family, is that they grow knowing that charitable giving is an important part, a really important part, in terms of what it does for them and in terms of what it's doing for the person that's benefiting.
Every guest we have on the podcast at the moment, we seem to be asking a very similar question, and because of the way of the world at the moment, with us being in a pandemic. So we always ask about, how are you managing, how are you coping through a pandemic? But for your sector in particular, with the hospitality sector being so, massively hurt by the pandemic, can you tell us about how you've personally found leading Mowgli through this time?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, to be honest. I hadn't had a moment's anxiety or stress, which is incredible, actually, when I stop and think about that through the whole of this. So what happened is, honestly, I build Mowgli in the way that I build my own home, in that, she has headroom, she has breathing space, so we could be closed for another 4 months and we'd be fine. I build her carefully. We don't over leverage. We don't take it close to the hilt. She's healthy. And what that meant, that security, just building her in that prudent way, meant that even before, as soon as I heard about what was happening in Italy, this is March of last year, I closed Mowgli a week before we had to, and we paid everyone in full, because I just thought, first of all, I just want to protect them from the pandemic. So we'll close before we have to, and it will come right. And it did, because then furlough came out. So we honoured our staff in terms of their physical and emotional health, closing early, and financially by paying them in full. what then happens is that they remain loyal to us because we were loyal to them. So we haven't lost a single member of staff. They're all raring to come back. They come back with a renewed energy. They come back with a renewed allegiance to Mowgli because we've got their back. We truly have got their back. And so what you didn't have, or what I didn't have, is I didn't have a body of staff that were anxious or worried about losing their jobs, or worried about how we would treat them, or worried about, do they come off furlough and suddenly we sack them? None of that, because they knew what our heart was at the beginning. So, we collaboratively really rode lockdown really well. What happens is, I tell you what happened in the beginning with hospitality particularly. I can tell you about my industry. Everyone was striving really hard to keep their teams engaged. So we've got an internal sort of social media platform, and we were doing loads of competitions, best banana bread, best dog walk, all of that kind of stuff. And then what happened, anyway, we came out of lockdown, and then we locked down again, and there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And what you realize is that we needed to stop trying. We just needed to say to people, look, just enjoy lockdown. We will be out at some point, but we're not going to constantly force you to come and interact with us. So my GMs phone every single member of their teams every couple of weeks to see how they're doing. We need to make sure that they're doing okay. So we've got that constant connection, but we don't contrive to use the social media platforms to keep all the staff interacting. Otherwise, I'm letting them rest, because they will come back with a vengeance in May. So that was a nice relief, really, just to think, you don't have to try too hard. They are secure, they're safe, they're mine, and we will all be reunited soon. So it's been a pleasure, to be honest. It really has. I think it's a pleasure because thankfully we didn't have to make any difficult decisions.
Yeah, it's really good to hear that you're looking after your team so well. Did you have to make any adaptations, to your business as a result? I mean, so as an example, the local football team that I support during the first lockdown and into the second provided 300 free meals for the local community, which, just amazing things that they did to turn around that many meals, just using the facilities that they got in the football club. Have you changed your model? Did you run a delivery service, or have you just basically kept it as it was?
You keep it closed, because what's most important, honestly, is that these people 500 people have got jobs to come back to. So I don't believe in keeping the brand alive for the sake of keeping the brand alive. It's not about that. I do all the social media for Mowgli. So I did, once I locked down, I did a video every single day. So I did a cooking video every single day on what I cooked, for 4 people with the debris that was in my fridge. And that was really helpful, I think, to a lot of people. So I put a lot of effort into doing that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to change the model. I'm not going to start doing delivery and all of those things that I would never have come to the restaurant industry for. I don't love the idea of people eating Mowgli in their underpants watching TV. That's not why I left being a barrister. I want people to take their kids and their dogs and come and sit in our restaurants and get the lights back on the high street. I don't want you to be eating my stuff out of a plastic box on your sofa. And so I have to, because the truth is that would have brought us some money in. But I have to I came to this industry because I believe in how powerful and important it is to provide reasonably priced food that is really good for you to families so that they can come and eat together out. And I have to stick to those guns. So for the pennies that I would have made, I'm not going to sully my ideology, which is get people back into restaurants as soon as we can. And I want people to come to eat Mowgli twice a week, because you can eat for 2 people, you can eat for £7 per head, really healthy stuff. So come and eat. So that's why I'm really particular about that. I wouldn't do delivery. I don't believe in these home take-up boxes where you cook curry on the hob. It's just not why I came to the business. I came to this for restaurants, and that's what I'm sticking to.
I really enjoyed listening to you talk, Nisha, about how fundamental to Mowgli is this idea of grace and intelligence and graft. And I guess as you start to think about kind of post-COVID, those 3 key elements will inform your motivation and your plans for the future. So what does the kind of future hold for you now, looking forward kind of post-COVID?
It's really, grace intelligence and graft applies to every single decision I make, every human that I hire. Every time I have to decide whether someone is right for the business or a decision is right for the business, I hold it up to those 3 piercing lights. Is it full of grace? Is there a good emotional intelligence to this person or to this decision? And, you know, the graft element, you know, that of course there's going to be graft element, you know, we need to love to work at these ideas, or these people love to need to work. The future for Mowgli, honestly, it's quite sweet and quite simple. It is simply to grow at the rate of about 4 a year and to enrich lives in the cities that we go to. And while people still want us, I will still grow. And then as soon as, you know, people move to burgers or whatever the next food thing is, you know, then I will slip away in the way that many brands do. But so far, I mean, Indian food has been a big part of this country since it arrived here in the 1700s. So I think the future is really bright for Mowgli, and there is a reason why we grow. And as I've said, you know, to enrich lives, it's really important. So it is that level of growth. And that's just a nice, easy thing for me to do. It's very easy for me to find sites and to get people together and build a restaurant and create the food. So it doesn't feel like a chore or any kind of a stress at all. But all the while, what I do is expand my team, and that's really exciting. You know, we get another 60 people per site, another 200 and whatever per year. It's exciting.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time, Nisha. This podcast is the Developing Practice podcast, and we like to finish each podcast in the same way, where we ask our guests 3 or 4 take-home tips that the listeners could reflect on in terms of their own practice. So if you've got anything, or 1 or 2 tips that people could reflect on, what would they be?
I think when you're leading or starting a business or starting a project, for me, what I realized is that I need a real sort of compassionate clarity of purpose, and you've got to work out what that is. Why is it that you are doing this thing? You know, why is it that you've decided to start a new job or a new project or are hiring this person? You know, what gets you out of bed every day? And I think working out, for me, my clarity of purpose is to enrich lives in the cities we go to. So have that, you know, use your emotion and your heart and your words to find out what it is that makes you tick and makes you want to keep going with your practice or your project. And it's got to be this thing that's bigger than yourself, than the day-to-day, the bean counting kind of thing. You know, it might be that the bean counting, in fact, just makes you feel full of joy and focus for 8 hours a day, and that's fine. That's your clarity of purpose. Because I bean count because it makes me feel wonderful for 8 hours a day, and then I go and watch Coriari or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? So it's that. The second thing is, honestly, the world doesn't owe you a living. I mean, this is coming from a very entrepreneurial angle, and you know, this is my aspect of someone who's changed careers and started to do something else. And it really is, you have to be so circumspect and you know, sort of calculating in a really humble way about the chances of your success, because the world doesn't owe you a living. You've got to really bring something, a unique passion, a real skill to the widget that you're going to create, and that's got to fill a gap in the market. So don't just think it will come to you. You got to work at it, and then you've also got to be clever enough to call it a day when you see that it's beginning to affect you and those around you. If suddenly you've got no roof over your head, and you know your marriage is walking out the door because you've turned into a psychopath because you've got no cash, call it a day. It wasn't meant to be, and that's fine, because then for every door that closes, another one will open.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time, Nisha. You've been great to speak with.
It's a pleasure.
Well, I really enjoyed that conversation with Nisha. There was lots there for me to think about and reflect on in terms of my leadership style and my practice. I thought it was really interesting what she said about how she really aims to keep it springtime within Mowgli. So never summer and certainly not autumn. She wants her ideas and her energy to be fresh, just like in the spring. And she said that this comes from a real passion for what you do, and that sustains her every morning.
Yeah, she did say that. And something else she mentioned quite a few times was the grace, intelligence, and graft. And those are 3 characteristics that she uses for all of her decisions, big and small. She says that she has a compassionate clarity of purpose for all that she does because she uses those 3 characteristics, which I found really interesting.
Well, if you'd like to take your thinking further, we've added some resources to the website on a specific podcast reading list, which you can access at liverpool.ac.uk/the-academy/podcast. Also, we'd love to hear what you thought about the podcast, so please do tweet us at Live Uni Academy, and you can also find us at eLearnerMatt or at Alexandra_Owen on Twitter.
I'm really grateful for those who have taken the time to either rate or review our show in your podcast provider's app. So if you are an Apple user, please do take the time to review our show, as it really will help others find us. Bye for now.